I'm someone who embraces new technology. I don't even fully hate AI or AI generating software as long as it's beneficial and doesn't negatively impact people. Fun fact, if you use modern editing software and you render the video you finish making at 1080p, 2K, 4K, 8K, or whatever HD output, your editor uses AI upscaling to increase any images or video clips below that resolution to fill in the gaps and match the video quality. The reason why I don't have a problem with AI upscaling is because at the end of the day, I still put in most of the work to make that video. My philosophy is that new technology isn't evil, it's the people who use it for malicious purposes. This is why I'm concerned about how Nintendo's Switch 2 will affect Five Nights at Freddy's. Now first off, I'm gonna put it out there that the Switch 2 isn't really anything new. It's a handheld console that can play games at 1080p 120 frames per second. While that might sound impressive to anyone who only keeps up with Nintendo or really doesn't know anything about gaming tech, but 1080p has been the standard for gaming since the late 2000s, even on portable systems if we include laptops. Even the 120Hz screen isn't all that unique since, once again, gaming laptops have come with built-in monitors better than 120Hz since the early 2010s. Now granted, laptops, even lower-end ones that can game but aren't built for gaming, cost more than the Switch 2, and laptops aren't competing with the console, but the price of these portable desktops are justified because you can do more with them than the Switch 2. And 2, the 120Hz screen is just a gimmick. You don't need that kind of display to experience 120 frames per second. As long as you have a 60Hz screen, which is the standard for nearly every modern TV and monitor, you will still experience 120 frames per second in your games even if your display can't show it. Higher frame rates just mean smoother animations and tighter controls. Nintendo is just using the 120Hz screen to justify raising the price of the Switch 2 when it could have launched with a much cheaper 75Hz built-in display. My best guess at what kind of hardware the Switch 2 packs is DDR6 RAM and an 8-core dual-threaded CPU. I will be very, very surprised if this thing is packaged with DDR7. In other words, it might have the power of a portable PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series S, and some people might think I'm being generous with that estimate. This means that Five Nights at Freddy's fans who own all their games on the Switch will in theory not only be able to play their games with smoother animations, but also better quality at a higher resolution. I say in theory because it's not guaranteed that every game on the Switch will get a boost on Switch 2. Even if the Switch ports do get an upgrade, they might be locked behind a paywall that Nintendo could strong-arm steel wool into. Nintendo is charging people to patch their first-party titles on Switch to take advantage of the Switch 2's hardware. I wouldn't put it past them to make it a requirement for third-party publishers to charge consumers who already bought their games for these patches, just so Nintendo can make some quick cash off of them. If charging for upgrade patches becomes a requirement, I could see a lot of Five Nights at Freddy's Switch players turn away from and even disregard the Switch 2, even if the patches only cost like $5 to $10 each. For Five Nights at Freddy's fans who are saving up until Secret of the Mimic gets ported to the Switch 2 before buying the console and all the games on that system, I hope you like paying for older games at their same launch price, possibly paying for patches on top of them, and paying for Secret of the Mimic at a steeper price than what players on other systems will have to spend. This is while ignoring having to spend around $500 to $700 on the console itself. After factoring all the costs, you could be spending a total of over $800 or even over $1,100. This is assuming that the patches for every older game only cost $10 each. This is a big problem because you can play all the current Five Nights at Freddy's games on a low-end gaming PC with a 1GB DDR5 video card. Even Security Breach, the most unstable and unoptimized game, can run on a 1GB DDR5 video card as long as you don't mind running it at medium to low settings at 1080p. Secret of the Mimic will highly likely only require a modern 4GB video card minimum, and those sell for dirt cheap nowadays. You can save a lot of money by just buying a secondhand quad-core office PC with 8GB of RAM and an SSD drive, installing that 4GB video card into it, and purchasing all the Five Nights at Freddy's games. Congratulations! You have maybe spent over $500 to a little over $600. That's including all the older games and Secret of the Mimic. Sure, this PC won't be a showstopper, but you don't need much if all you're going to play on it is Five Nights at Freddy's. And this is all assuming you don't have a PC or some modern system already capable of playing these games in the first first place. Even upgrading from PlayStation 4, Xbox One, or Switch to PC just for Secret of the Mimic is possibly cheaper than getting an Xbox Series S. When looking at the requirements for the Secret of the Mimic on Steam's preview page, this game looks like it only needs 8 gigabytes of hard drive space. The good news is that most likely Stillwell is aiming to make a small enough game to fit entirely on a Switch 2 cartridge. Hell, I wouldn't be surprised if, and actually hope, they plan on porting this title to both the Switch 1 and 2. The bad news is that the Switch 2 version might not actually be in the card if you plan on buying a physical copy of the game. Nintendo has outright stated that there will be cartridges that only contain the product key, and you will need to use that product key to download it from the Nintendo eShop. Alex from Oh No It's Alex does a much better job of explaining this than I ever could, so take it away, Alex.
You think you own the game? You think I'm gonna spend the $90 anyways and get the game? I'm gonna own that game. It's gonna be my game, right? That's what you think. You think you're gonna spend close to $100? You're gonna own that game! Because I couldn't believe this myself, but it is in fact actually true. The Nintendo has confirmed on their own website that some Switch 2 games won't have the game on the cart, and the cartridge will only be used as a license to check the game that will then be needed to get downloaded. I thought this was fake. I was like, there's no way this is real. It has to be fake. Baby, it's 100% real. Look at this. Look at this. Switch 2 game card overview from Nintendo's own support website. They're literally showing you that there is full-on DRM on this device, flat out 100%. The physical copy that you buy will literally have a digital code or key to let you access to download the game. So you'll be giving them not $70, not $80, $90 for a physical empty cart that you will then put into your Switch to buy the game and play the game digitally.
This means that if it could possibly make Stillwell more money, they could set up a scheme where the Switch 1 version of Secret of the Mimic contains the full game in the card, but the Switch 2 version doesn't. Fans then get mad at Stillwell and say, hey, we're not gonna buy the Switch 2 version of your game, to which Stillwell replies with, don't worry friends, the Switch 1 version is fully compatible with the Switch 2 and cheaper to boot, but it only runs at 30 frames per second and a 740 by 480p resolution. And that's in docked mode. If you want to run the Switch 1 version at 1080p 120 frames per second, well that'll be an extra $10. That $40 and $10 upgrade is still cheaper than the $60 version for the Switch 2. Don't fall for this scam if it happens, because again, it won't just be Secret of the Mimic on Switch 1 that will require a $10 upgrade patch. It will also happen to Help Wanted, Curse of Dreadbear, Security Breach Ruin, and Help Wanted 2. You'll be spending $50 alone just on upgrade patches. Now, I don't think Stillwell will do something that evil. Putting my beef with the developer studio and what they've done to the Five Nights at Freddy's lore aside, the people over there seem to really care about their players and providing the best experience for them. Hopefully, Stillwell takes the best course of action and only releases a Switch 1 port of Secret of the Mimic. Players who purchase the Switch port for their Switch 2 get the 1080p 120 frames per second upgrade patch for free. I'm also crossing my fingers that the Switch ports of Help Wanted, Security Breach, and Help Wanted 2 all get free Switch 2 upgrade patches as well. If not, and Nintendo forces Stillwell to charge players for the upgrade patches, I'm really hoping that at most Stillwell will only charge $5 at most for each game's upgrade. Nintendo could negatively influence Stillwell by allowing their bad business practices to go to the developers' heads. If Stillwell is led by the wrong example, they could start believing that they can get away with charging $60 or even $70 for physical games that aren't even on the disc or cartridge. They might start charging extra money for upgraded versions of their games on consoles. Worst of all, they could start treating the community like garbage and say, Well, if you don't want to pay $10 to upgrade your game, have fun playing it at 30 frames per second, 480p resolution, or buy the PC port. What if Nintendo offers more money than Sony to make Steel Wool's future Five Nights at Freddy's titles switch to timed exclusives? That is possibly the worst route Steel Wool could go down, because it would mean their games would go from $40 or $50 to $60 or $70, always charge for patches, and on top of everything, be locked behind an expensive console that the entire community would have to purchase just so they can continue making Five Nights at Freddy's content. I believe the best course of action Steel Wool and Scott Cawthon should take is dropping Sony, not focusing on porting their games to as many systems as possible, and offering the license to Microsoft for the time being. Could you imagine the impact Five Nights at Freddy's joining Xbox console and PC Game Pass would have? Oh, I could imagine a 3D animated trailer where Banjo and Kazooie introduce Freddy Fazbear and the rest of his bandmates to the other characters Microsoft has licenses to before handing him an Xbox controller. The screen then fades to white as green text reads, "Microsoft proudly welcomes Freddy Fazbear and friends to the Xbox family." Then more green text fades in under that message saying, "Now all your favorite Five Nights at Freddy's games are available on Game Pass." Stores wouldn't be able to keep Xbox systems on the shelves, and Game Pass would have an all-time record high soar in subscriber numbers. Best of all, Microsoft would allow Steel Wool to continue porting their games to PC and other systems, so not much would change for them. What do you think of everything I said? Would Five Nights at Freddy's be better if Microsoft purchased the license from under Sony? Am I being too dramatic about Nintendo's Switch 2 affecting Steel Wool? Do you even believe that Secret of the Minute will get a Switch 2 port? Personally, I'm looking forward to Secret of the Minute because this is the kind of Five Nights at Freddy's game I've been waiting for with non-hostile NPC animatronics. Thank you for watching this far because it makes you my shining star.